So today we are joined by Taylor Glassmore. He's a co-founder of Zumper, one of the largest rental property listing sites out there, which no doubt you've used before. So hello and welcome, Taylor. Really appreciate you joining us today. Appreciate you coming on.
Hi, Logan. Pleasure to be here.
Cool. So just drop a message into the chat if you can hear our voices okay. Just want to do a quick sound check before we kick off, and there'll be no doubt a few people joining in late, as they always do. And so just drop a message in as you come in. Let us know that you can hear us. So I'm going to jump into a bit of an intro of what this whole webinar is about. So basically, there are three main areas to rental listings. First, we're going to look at the sort of vacancies and how much they cost and how to reduce them. Then we'll take a look at what actually goes into a compelling listing, and finally, how to leverage various marketplaces and channels like Zumper to get maximum reach to your listing. And if you do have any questions, feel free to drop them into the chat below. We'll do our best to address them at the end of the webinar, or if we have time throughout the webinar. So yeah, make sure you stick around. Cool. So let's jump into a little bit of a backstory. So vacancies are obviously very expensive and stressful, and they are typically, the beginning of this conversation. And for a property sitting vacant for 1 month, you have to account for all the missed rent plus all the marketing costs and your time. And if you hire a property manager to find the tenant for you, their fee can be as much as a full month of rent. So through this period, you're basically sitting with still paying bills, and that's when it becomes very expensive for you. And the most effective way to keep vacancies down is to retain your current tenants. A few tips to make this more likely include sort of avoid making large and sudden rent increases, making sure to stay on top of maintenance jobs, be responsive, and avoid being intrusive. However, as a landlord, even if you do everything right, dealing with vacancies is inevitable. So if at the end of the lease, the tenant does decide to move on, or you choose not to renew your lease, you need to be ready with a plan to fill your property fast. But first, I'd love to get a few insights from you, Taylor, on, I guess, some effective strategies, high-level strategies that landlords can use to reduce vacancies and attract new tenants into the property.
Sure. So I think you nailed it with the first step, which is if you have a great tenant, you want to retain that tenant. So, in a market like San Francisco, for instance, which used to be a very competitive rental market, some landlords are seeing tenants moving out of apartments, switching into different places. We're starting to see that happen in other markets too, as there's just more options and prices start to drop. In the event you have a really great tenant, I would do what you can to retain it. If it turns out that the value of the unit has gone down, it's better to renegotiate with that existing tenant than to try to find a new one and risk the unit sitting vacant for a few months. But if for whatever reason it's a better strategy to re-rent the property, then there's quite a few things you want to do to market it to a new audience, which I could get into. I don't know how, if you want to hear all the steps now, or if we want to get into a little bit later.
No, I think that covers some of the higher level stuff, and we can jump into the detail later. But I think you made some good points there. The most effective way to keep your rental property tenanted is to keep the existing tenants. And so I think that's really key, and sort of something that we highlighted as well. So
Yep.
We'll continue on, and we'll start to go into some of the listing parts of this as well. So I guess once you've determined, for everyone sort of listening, your current tenant, if you've determined that they're moving out, it's time to sort of jump into action. And the first step is to create your listing. And there are three main elements to a great rental property listing. The first is, the headline. That's the thing that the renter sees first. It should be the eye-catching and descriptive type of headline that really draws somebody in. The photographs, before a tenant looks at the description, they're going to skim through the photos and make sure this place is, a place they actually want to live in. And bad photos typically kill your chances of any good applicant coming through the door. And finally, the description of that rental property as well. So I guess question for you, Taylor, is sort of when creating a listing, when should landlords really start that process and what needs to go into it? How do they make it stand out from everyone else?
Yeah, so I think it's always better to do things sooner rather than later. So as soon as a tenant has given you notice to vacate, um, that's generally actually pretty shortly after. If I have great photos of the unit from when it was previously listed, that's generally when I market it. And I market it just announcing that the unit will be ready, in 30 days or whatever the period is when we can deliver it vacant, because it's good to start getting the leads early, even if you're not quite ready to show it. And if the unit is actually, if you're lucky and you have a tenant who keeps their place clean and the unit is presentable, you might even be able to. It might look nice enough that you could actually show it while it's tenant occupied. You just need to give your tenant notice. Typically, it's 24 hours, but it depends on the city and state. But and then you can show it while it's tenant occupied, and you might even get lucky and find a great tenant who's ready to move in. Literally the day after that tenant moves out. So that would apply for a unit that shows well, that can lease quickly. If it doesn't, you can still pre-market it, but just let the renters know when it's available for move in. But I think it's always good to get started early, start collecting the leads now rather than later.
Cool. And before we sort of go on, I just want to touch briefly on housing law. We'll do another webinar on this later, but that sort of goes into greater detail. But I guess for you, Taylor, what are some of the things that landlords and investors can and can't do when it comes to creating their listing and selecting a tenant? Bearing in mind this is not a legal webinar, but just sort of some very basic stuff that you, I guess, can't do in a listing.
Sure. Yeah. As you mentioned, I'm not an attorney. But I can give you general rules of thumb. I think and by the way, now it's pretty contentious in the US, where you have different states and different metros have specific rules. Now you can't even request you can't even run an eviction background check on renters, which to me is kind of crazy. But in some places you can't do that. In some markets, they're trying to remove the ability to run credit reports on renters. So these are all kind of silly things that cities and states are trying to do. So I think the best thing you can do is, when it comes time to creating a list of your property, really make it about the property. Don't make it about what you're looking for in a tenant. And if you follow that guideline, you should be fine. If you make it about the property, here are all the features. Here's the description. Here's what the location's about. Here's some special features about the property. You'll be fine. If you make it about, we're looking for a tenant that meets X criteria, as soon as you start labeling criteria, you're playing a dangerous game. Believe it or not, there are people from the government who literally look at Craigslist ads and other listing ads to try to pick and choose ads that might be violating the Fair Housing Act, and go after those landlords. So just make it about the property, not about what you're looking for. I can get into how to qualify a renter, how to pick a great tenant. I can get into that a little bit later, but that's not something that you want to include in the rental listing.
Perfect. Yeah, so good to know that. And if you do have any questions about this, be sure to reach out to a qualified legal attorney, as they can help you with this. So I guess one question now is what are the sort of channels that landlords should focus on? Should they be focusing on sort of one channel or multiple? And what are some of the things that they can do to leverage listing sites to, I guess, maximize their efforts? Yeah, I guess question for you, what's your sort of view on this and how does it help really, or how does it really help landlords maximize their exposure and should they be doing multiple sorts of channels?
Sure. So obviously, I'm biased because I
Totally.
operate
Yeah.
as a listing site for apartment rentals called Zumper. But at the same time, it's you really want to you don't want to have all your eggs in one basket. You know, you really want to diversify. You want to make sure that you're advertising on multiple sites. Um, and I would say that folks who post to our site generally are posting to one or two other sites, and those sites tend to basically be so there's Zumper. We also have our an affiliate network. So with Zumper, you get access to PadMapper, but we also publish to Microsoft Bing too. We also have a GPT as well, which is becoming a more popular way to search listings. And we have an affiliation with realtors. So by posting to Zumper, you get access to multiple sites. So that's one way to diversify. But Zillow is the largest real estate search platform in the country. So that's another good place to post. I would say apartments.com. I mean, you list them here. I think apartments might charge you. I'm not sure if they have a free if it's free, but if it is free, you generally are going to want to pay because the free listings get pushed really far down in apartments. And then Facebook Marketplace, keep in mind it's a little bit like the new Craigslist. So while it might get you a lot of leads, there are quite a few spammy and kind of spammy leads and some weirdos there. But I would say Zillow, Apartments, and us would be your best bet. The other option is, I mean, we were talking about kind of like Craigslist. There are some markets where Craigslist is still probably useful, like San Francisco and LA. People still search on Craigslist, but so I'd recommend within your market if you do a little bit of research to see what's popular in your market, there might be a local platform like in New York, for instance. Street Easy is a popular local platform, but Street Easy doesn't exist in Atlanta or Denver. So I would also only other bullet point I would add to this would be, check to see if there's a local player in your market that's worth posting to. But if you were to post to, those four platforms, you'd be fine. You'd find leads. You'd find leads very quickly.
And one of the reasons I like Zumper is I guess, how clean and easy it feels. I've found with a few of the other sites, they can be a little bit cluttered. I guess, what is your chance to pitch Zumper over the others? What are some of the unique benefits that are going to come from using Zumper to find
Yeah.
that tenant?
Yeah, no, I appreciate that, Logan. I mean, we really focus on a very kind of streamlined experience. I mean, compared to Zillow, for instance, which does for sale and for rent. We're exclusively for rent, so that really allows us to create a more focused experience and go after a specific audience. Um, but our secret sauce is that we're very mobile focused. So a lot of our traffic comes from our apps. They're some of the highest rated rental apps on both the Google Play Store and Apple App Store. So that's a big thing for us, and it really is about the user experience. The other thing too is we're really good about when there's a new listing, notifying the right people. So if you're a landlord, as soon as you post a listing to Zumper, we're sending email notifications to renters that have searched for something similar. We're sending push notifications on our mobile apps to renters that either have favorited similar listings or are searching for something similar. So we're really good about, if you have a listing, getting it in front of the right people as quickly as possible.
Yeah, and I can echo that mobile experience as well because we've also got their mobile apps for tenants, and overall, tenants just prefer that as a technology channel for doing everything day to day. And so we allow a landlord to obviously provide a better experience that way. So tenants are using apps to find rentals, and with Zumper you can do that. So
And to
that's
give you a
just
plug too, Logan, I mean, if landlords are using Landlord Studio, it publishes to Zumper.
exactly. And we'll jump into a little bit of a demo around that later. But sort of just in summary of the slide, one way to find tenants fast is obviously to use lots of platforms. Another way to find tenants is to use the technology choices that are in the place. But also something that Taylor said, obviously, is to find some of those local listing and marketplaces in your area as well. So that'll help maximize the sort of exposure of your rental listing across all platforms. So, going to dig a little bit into Zumper specifically. From what you've seen, how many of these sort of leads does a good listing get in a typical day and week? What can landlords typically expect? And we know there's a caveat here because of location and time in the year, but what are some of those stats that you've seen, and also what are some of the ways that landlords can use Zumper to speed up that tenant selection process?
Yeah, that's a good question. Unfortunately, there isn't a one size fits all answer because it really depends on the the property, the rent that you're asking, the location that you're in, the time of year. There's a lot of different factors. But one thing I will say is that if you if you're priced right, you should be getting, I would say, 5 to 10 leads a week. That's generally what you should be getting. If you're getting 100 leads a week, your price way too low. That's not necessarily a good thing. Just getting a ton of leads, that just basically means that, yeah, you've underpriced your listing. If you're not getting any leads, that's generally because you've overpriced your listing. So I would suggest, if you're getting in the 5 to 10 range each week, let's say out of those 10, you should be able to get a few to tour. So let's say you're getting two to three tours a week. Within a few tours, you're going to find your tenant. So 5 to 10 leads within a few weeks, you should be able to get a tenant. If you're getting more leads than that, I would recommend increasing your price, unless you're the type of landlord that wants more leads because you want more more candidates to kind of pick the right tenant. Some people are in that camp. But in general, if you're getting a lot of leads, I would suggest increasing the price. And if you're not getting enough, if you're not getting enough leads, then I would suggest decreasing the price.
Interesting. You talk about if you're getting a ton of leads and maybe because you priced your rental property incorrectly. So I guess earlier we sort of mentioned a few things around attracting high quality renters, and one of them is setting a competitive rent price. But do you have any sort of tips on how landlords can, do their market research and determine the right rent for their property?
Yeah, sure. So luckily, there's a few tools you have out right now. With like shameless plug here, but on Zumper, when you go to create a listing, if you put in the details of the listing, we actually recommend a price for that property, and that price is based on what we're seeing with comps and also what we're seeing with leads. So we have a pretty interesting um, a machine learning a tool to help you price your unit. Zillow also has their Zestimate for coming up with rental price. Maybe even Landlord Studio has as a tool too. There's a few tools out there to basically price your listing. So coming up with a price shouldn't be that difficult. The only thing I would add beyond just the pricing tools would be, browse search sites to look for comparable listings and just see what things are being priced at, and look at how many days on the market how many days they've been on the market. Um, and then you have to kind of determine, are you the type of landlord that wants to lease this thing quickly, or is there a specific price you need to get for this place and you're willing to keep it on the market longer? So then you need to do kind of that internal debate. Um, the but generally I like to price to market. I don't like keeping my listings on for a very long time, because if it's a $3,000 a month listing, every month it's sitting vacant, you're losing $3,000. I'd rather, if I can't get 3K for it, I'd rather rent it for 2850 or a little bit lower than lose 3 grand every month because I want to get a specific price. But everybody's a little bit different. But yeah, my recommendation is use some of the pricing tools that are out there, and then look at comparable listings online, and then decide how long you want to keep your listing on, and price it accordingly.
Awesome. Yeah, and we've got a lot of information on how to set rent prices on our blog as well. So be sure to check that out for those who are listening. So let's kind of continue on a little bit more. So once we've sort of covered a lot so far when it comes what you can do when it comes to marketing your listing, and we want to take a quick look about what actually happens next. What do you do with all those leads you've generated with, and how do you use the rental application process and tenant screening and all those other components that come after the lead to actually find and select the right tenant? So love to hear some insights on setting a tenant criteria and how you can sort of use this criteria to select the right tenant in your own experience, Taylor, and I guess how you would do this with your own properties. Oh, your microphone's on mute.
Yeah,
there we
go. So I think the first thing is, you want someone who's able to actually move in when the unit is vacant. So I think the first thing is, the basics are, um, asking when people are messaging you about your listing, you basically that's an opportunity to do the pre-screen before you get to the application stage. So and the pre-screen is important for a few reasons. One is you want to find the people that are motivated, who are the most likely to complete a successful application. But two is, you also don't want to waste your time. You don't want to waste your time touring people at a property who are just totally unqualified. Sometimes I have to travel across the city to tour a listing, and I want to make sure I'm doing it for someone who's qualified. You can also, an option is to set a lockbox on the property, and there's special smart lockboxes out there that allow people to do touring. There's I'm blanking on the company, but it basically does it allows the renter to do kind of pre-screen through the phone, and then gives them a code to actually tour, which that's a kind of a nice option. So you don't actually have to physically meet the person, and let them in. But for some landlords, they actually want to meet the person. They meet the tenant. Maybe they only have 1 or 2 units, and they want to meet the tenant in person. So a physical tour, the meeting at the property is important. So in that case, the pre-screening I do is, one is I ask, when is this person moving? How many people is it? I ask, have they had a credit report done recently? And if so, what's the score? I ask, what's the reason for moving? I ask, do they are they employed? Or are they still looking for a job? Um, and then I ask, um, things like, do you have any pets? Do you have do you have any cars? Trying to get a sense for kind of exactly what they're looking for, and then in trying to figure out what they're looking for, is this going to be the right fit for them? For instance, if they're looking for a new construction property, and my place is a unit from the early 1900s, I need to let them know, and so I have this kind of conversation. So the pre-screen conversation is to both see if the renter is qualified for the property, and then also if the property is going to be kind of the right fit for the renter too. I'm also very honest. If the renters, if the renter is looking for something that this property doesn't have, I'll tell them, hey, the property unfortunately doesn't have this, and then it might not be the right fit. So those are kind of the early kind of pre-screening kind of criteria that I do early on. And renters actually will appreciate that too, because they don't want to waste their time either. If this isn't going to be the right fit for them, they also don't want to waste their time. So I think it's the right thing to do these pre-screening.
Yeah, that's really interesting. And I guess one of the most important things is being able to verify that they can actually afford to pay for this rental property. And so once you start to move into the application stage, I guess what are some of the ways that you can verify, credit and income and the things that I guess you could easily fake or simply just falsify on any sort of pre-screening doc that you might put out?
Yeah, it's a great question, and I think even now, especially with the way people are using AI to kind of fake things, it's becoming harder to tell what's fake and what's real. Um, so there's a few services out there that do some basic screening. I mean, for instance, with Zumper, we're integrated with TransUnion, which is one of the top 3 credit bureaus in the country. So we're able to pull a verified credit report on renters. Landlord Studio might have their own process too for screening renters and handling applications. There's tools out there if you want to run a credit report. Eviction, you have to be a little bit careful there, because some states, they no longer let you pull eviction reports, which I think is insane, but that's how some states are. And this, if you're allowed to do it, then I'd recommend doing it. And even a criminal background check, some states won't allow you to do that, but in states that let you do it, I'd recommend doing it. And so those are the reports that you're pulling. Then there's verifying information from the rental application. So a big thing is obviously income. The best way to verify income is to ask for copies of pay stubs. You can go one level deeper, which is to get the contact information from the employer and reach out to the employer to confirm that the tenant is working, is their job is in good standing, so they're still employed at the company, and that they earn what they say they do. Then the other thing is, in some markets, people go as far as asking for copies of bank statements. Those ones to verify, if you can get in touch with their banker, great. But sometimes it's a little bit tough. It's a little bit tough to do that. But generally, someone who's going to falsify one document is going to falsify a bunch. So, if you're going through the process and everything is looking good so far, you're probably fine. Someone who's going to falsify a document too, there's generally, use your use your spidey sense and kind of you'll know if someone is a little weird, up front. So, I would, I can tell you from my experience, I've screened hundreds of renters. I've had very, very few situations where something seemed a little bit off. And maybe it's from the pre-screening I do early on, where someone who looks like they're going to be a scammer just won't bother to try to apply. It's pretty rare, but there's some markets or some types of properties, some neighborhoods where you might encounter scams a little bit more. But again, you have resources to run full reports, credit, background, and then you can personally verify information by contacting employers.
Yeah, that's a really great sort of overview of that process and sort of spells out each individual step. So appreciate that. And we have sort of a final word on managing your rental listings overall, and that's sort of the role that property management software like Landlord Studio plays in that. And so we mentioned already that you can create and syndicate listings across all the marketing channels, including Zumper. And we just want to show you quickly how that process looks and how streamlined that can be. because having everything in one place and having all the leads come in and being able to manage them and then move them into the process of leasing is just a great way to do that. So we'll jump into a quick sort of 2-minute demo and I'll talk you through the process. And if you have any questions, again, drop them into the chat and we can be sure to answer those at the end. So first is creating the rental listing. So the first thing you need to do is obviously create an account or log in, and then from the dashboard, you can head across to the listings page. Creating a new listing is really easy. If you've already got your property set up, it will display there. You can then select the property type, add a few details, bathrooms, etc. as well. And so that's the really first step of the process. So now we then, create that listing and give it the sort of relevant amenities. Let me just click that. And so what that looks like is basically selecting all the different amenities that you want to display on your listing. And so this could be, water, this could be electricity, all the different types that you want to just include in it. And then finally, you can give it a description, title, etc. You can use ChatGPT as a way to generate some of those titles and descriptions, but there's also some great resources online to show you how to do that. So now we're sort of into the process of adding a bit more detail to the listing. So we've got sort of date available, the deposit, the rent amount, rent schedule, if pets are allowed, if smoking's allowed, etc. So here I'm going to add the lease details, starting on the 1st of May, this is when the property is available. It's the 1st of May. This is how much the deposit is. This is how much the rent is, and then I can add my simple contact information, which is typically displayed on the listing. And then I can go ahead and add all my photos to this as well, drag and drop them in the way that I want. And then it's super easy to create that and set up that listing there. So now we'll jump into the sort of pre-screening. So just a little bit about the pre-screening where Taylor mentioned before. This is a great way to ask some of those questions that you might want to know upfront before you even make contact with the potential tenant. And then this will really allow you to collect all that information. So what happens typically is when a lead comes in, you can automatically send this pre-screening questionnaire out to them. They can go on the website, on our listing, and then fill that information in. And then that information's essentially appended to the lead when it comes in. So we've come up with quite a few different types of pre-screening questionnaires, questions to add to your questionnaire that you can just toggle on and off of the ones that you deem fit for that. So here now we're going to review the listing. And so we can go through that, make sure everything's correct, make sure the pre-screening questionnaires are correct, contact details, etc., and then submit that. And then that essentially creates the listing in Landlord Studio. So now we can see it in Landlord Studio. We'll go through in it, make sure this is legitimate. So we do a verification on all listings to make sure that it is a legitimate listing. And then from here, we can approve that for you. And then you can either share this out to your own listing website, or now we sort of start the syndication process that goes out to Zumper, etc. So we'll jump into that now. Once you hit the syndication button, we then push that listing out to the sites, including Zumper, and it's as easy as that. It will take possibly up to a few hours to push that syndication out. And then once that syndication is out, we can jump onto the Zumper site and we can see that nice listing all set up, ready to go. And typically this is where, the applicants are searching for their house. This contains all the information that you've entered in to the listing before. And then they can just come in here and check the availability, request a tour, etc. So very simple way to create a listing in the product of a Landlord Studio and then syndicate it out and then retrieve all those leads right into the product. So easy as that. Very simple, very streamlined way of creating listing and marketing it out to many people. So, and once your leads start coming in, you can then sort of review them. You can review the pre-screening answers. You can use templated emails to arrange next steps, ring them, etc. And then you can move into that stage of the application stage. And sort of once you've selected your tenant after screening, etc., then you can set up the lease in the system, and it's all sort of baked into one place. And then you can even invite them into the tenant portal to pay their rent online. So really, we're trying to create a full streamlined end-to-end service from listing all the way for the tenant moving into the property. And these rental listing and tenant management features are sort of paired with a full accounting suite as well. So one of our top sort of features is the automated income and tracking accounting features, which then allow you to stay on top of your finances and streamline tax time as well. So if you have any questions about this or any questions for Taylor, I'd love for you to drop them into the chat now. I see a lot of people are going to be reviewing or rewatching this offline, so we'll be sharing that link out for this webinar. And if you do have any other questions around that, hit us up on social as well. But yeah, let's jump into the last bit to sort of wrap up today's webinar. I want to thank everyone for attending, and we really hope that you've found today's webinar valuable and how it can sort of help your property marketing efforts. And for Taylor, appreciate you coming on. Where can the audience find more about Zumper and the steps, and what are the sort of the stages that they should take just to find out a little bit more about Zumper and how it can help them?
Yeah, sure. So first of all, thanks so much for having me on, Logan. It's been a real pleasure chatting with you and sharing some of our some insights on how to market your property. If you're looking for just some general content and information on how to market your rental or just general landlord tips, we actually have a blog that you can go to that has all this information. So just go to Zumper.com and look for our blog. We have all sorts of resources there for landlords. And then, as far as posting to Zumper, if you use Landlord Studio, your listing automatically syndicates to Zumper, so it displays. But if you want to get even more leads from Zumper, then you can promote your Landlord Studio listing on Zumper, and that's something that you can just email our support team for help with. But we have ways that you can actually get your listing towards the top of search results if you want to get more leads. So resources can all be found at Zumper, and I appreciate everyone's time today.